Hi, I'm Jordan Poole from Zenatta Consulting. In this tutorial, we're going to go over how to take leads coming in from forms on your WordPress website and funnel them directly into your Zoho CRM account. I hope you enjoy the video and find it useful. Thanks for joining me, and let's get into it. One of the most common things I get asked from every customer is, how do I get my leads into CRM, and do I need to change all of my forms on my website to be Zoho forms? And a lot of people assume the answer is yes, you do need to make that change, but in a lot of cases you actually don't, and the forms you're already using on your WordPress website can very easily be linked into Zoho with very little setup effort. There are a few different ways that we tend to do that. The first and best option is going to be that we can just directly integrate that particular form builder into Zoho because there's a native integration. If that's not available to us, a lot of times there is a Zoho Flow integration, which will allow us to use Zoho Flow as the connector that gets us connected. And then finally, if neither of those options are available, we also could use webhooks, which will allow most form builders will allow you to send a link, a bunch of information about a form submission. And if we can do that, we can also connect that to Zoho Flow and then flow things into the CRM. So we'll start off by going over the best case scenario, which is you're using a form builder such as Gravity Forms that has a direct integration with Zoho CRM. Gravity Forms is not the only WordPress form builder that directly integrates into Zoho, but it's the one I'm going to use for this demonstration. The others are going to have very similar steps. So for Gravity Forms, if we go into the add-on section, you can search or scroll down and you should see a Zoho CRM add-on. Most form builders will have an add-ons section, and because Zoho is in the alphabet where it is, you'll usually find it at the very bottom of the list. Most of them are free to use. Some are pay to use. In this case, we have a free to use one, so I'm going to go ahead and add that plugin to Gravity Forms. Once you've added the add-on to whatever form builder you're using that directly integrates with Zoho, let's say you have this advanced contact form, which is the main contact form on your website. In Gravity Forms, all I have to do is hover over the settings option, scroll down to Zoho CRM, and then the next step will depend on whether or not I've actually linked my Zoho account to this particular Gravity Forms like installation. So you see, to get started, I need to configure Zoho CRM settings, and it's going to give me a button that I can click, and then I can click here to connect to Zoho CRM. From here, because I'm already logged into Zoho on this browser, it recognized my CRM account and it's asking me if I accept the connection. I say yes. It's going to redirect me right back to the demo site. And in this case, it looks like it logged me out. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of there and get the password. If this happens to you, no problem at all. Just log back into your WordPress site and you should see the integration all set up. Once you've hopped back in and logged into the WordPress site and you go back to Gravity Forms, now that you've created the CRM connection, when you go into settings under the form you want to connect and go to Zoho CRM, you should see a new message letting you know that you don't have any feeds configured and that you need to create one. A feed is effectively you just saying, I want this form to go to this place in CRM with this behavior. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new feed. And from here, it's fairly straightforward. I'm going to name the feed. You could call this main contact form to CRM. And then the action you want it to do. With this particular form builder, Gravity Forms, they give you two options, creating a lead or creating a contact. So I'm going to choose to create a lead. And then it's just going to ask me for every field on my form, where do I want it to go in the CRM? So you'll see the CRM field listed on the left-hand side and the form field listed on the right. And if the field in the CRM is mandatory, it'll give you a star and it will make sure that you have to put information in there. Otherwise, it will fail to create the lead. So this form has a few fields, but not a business field. So we'll just pretend that it does have a business field, and I will just use, let's say, their email address as the company name. And then I'll also put the email address in the email field, first name to first name, last name to last name. You get the gist. Once you've gone ahead and configured all of these fields and chosen any extra information you want to map in, such as who the lead owner should always be, In most cases, people will leave this blank and set up a round robin type system inside their CRM. Set up your lead rating, your source, which will typically you'll let it know that it came from your website in some way, such as web download, web form, whatever it may be based on the lead sources in your particular CRM. And then the options here are very important. The main one that's important to note is this workflow mode. Always select this if you want the form submission to trigger other automations inside your CRM. So if you were to create a lead manually, you basically want it to follow the same rules. And then for allowing duplicate leads, if you allow duplicate leads, it will just create that lead regardless of the email address being unique. If you don't tell it to allow duplicate leads, you can tell it to instead update the lead if that lead already exists based on email address. Same with most integrations with Zoho. Finally, if you needed to create a task for anybody, you can do that as well, such as creating a task for the lead owner to follow up with this lead in the next 24 hours or whatever you may need for tasks. Once you've created this feed and you save it, you're good to go. This is now saved, and anytime this particular form on my website is submitted by anybody, it's going to collect the details from that form submission and put it directly into the leads so that I can process that lead. The next option, so that's if it has a direct integration. The next option we need to look at is if the form builder we're using has a direct integration with Zoho Flow, which we can then use as an intermediate conduit to get the data into CRM. A lot of form builders have integrations with Zoho Flow, and the first step to find out if your form builder does is to actually install this Zoho Flow plugin on your WordPress installation. So just like with any WordPress plugin, you just need to go into the plugins area, search for Zoho Flow when you choose to add a new plugin. And I'll just quickly show you guys which one you want to select. This first one with this green and blue logo is the one you want to install and then activate on your site. Once you've done that, you'll see that Zoho Flow appears on the left-hand side of your WordPress admin panel. And if you click on Zoho Flow, it will take you to the main page that lists all of the different supported plugins. In this case, you'll see Contact Form 7, WP Forms, and Ninja Forms are all here, which are very popular form builders on WordPress sites that you may already be using. There's also Elementor's Forms, Everest Forms, Formidable Forms, and a lot of other popular form builders. For this demo, I've already set up a form in Everest Forms as an example. And we're going to walk through how I would connect that to Zoho Flow, and then once it's connected to Zoho Flow, how I would connect that to the CRM. So to do this, first thing you want to do is make sure you add this supported plugin. So you need to click the plugin, make sure you have it added, and then you need to add what's called an API key. I've already got one called Zoho CRM Demo, which I could use, but for the purposes of this demo, let's assume I don't already have an API key for Everest Forms. I would need to click New API Key. And then it would ask me to give it a short description so that I can remember what this is being used for connecting. So we'll call this Zoho Flow Connector. And then we'll generate it. It's going to give you this key, and you only have this one time. So you need to copy it by clicking on this little clipboard. You will not see an animation, but trust me, it's copying to your clipboard. And I would recommend pasting it in a file and saving it somewhere on your computer securely. If not, you need to go ahead and use it in Zoho Flow immediately before you hit this OK button. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and I'm going to save it off to the side on a notepad. I would suggest you do the same. I'm going to hit OK to create this API key and make it finalized. And then if I refresh, you'll see that the Zoho Flow connector now exists, and I've got the API key. To actually use this API key to connect to Zoho Flow, you need to go to flow.zoho.com, and then you want to create a brand new flow. So I'm going to click to create a flow, and I'll call this Zoho Leads Demo. And for your actual trigger, you want to choose to trigger it from an app. And once your app list pops up, any form builder that was listed in that plugin in WordPress will also be listed here. So if I was to start typing Everest, you'll see that Everest form is here in beta. And it's going to allow me to trigger based on an Everest form entry being added, meaning someone filled out the form. I'm going to select that and hit next. And for any app in Zoho Flow that you connect, the first thing you need to do is actually create a connection. So when I click to connect this, it's going to ask me for the API key that we just generated. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. It's going to ask me to give it a connection. So I'm going to call this main WordPress website to let me know, just in case I was linking multiple websites, what website is connected in this particular instance. And then it's going to ask you for this base URL. And it does give you very clear instructions on where to find this, but essentially you need to go into WordPress, go to the WP admin panel, under dashboard, settings, general, there will be site address URL. You need to copy whatever value is in there and paste it in here. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to hop into the WordPress backend here. And then I'm going to go under my admin, go under general under the settings. And once that page loads up, you want this box, the site address URL. So I'm going to take that site address URL, paste it into this box, and then click the authorize button. And that's it. The connection's created, and I can now choose any forms from that Everest form builder and start connecting them to my Zoho Flow and therefore to Zoho CRM. So the next step, once you've got your actual app builder connected, or your form builder, connected, you want to choose the form. I'm going to choose contact form with the ID number of 40, because that's the form that I'm going to use for testing this after. In addition, you can add filter criteria, such as only trigger this if they filled out a certain field on the form, if they selected a certain box, like it opting into email communication, whatever they may have checked on the form, you can add filters here. And then once you've chosen what you want this connection to be, you'll see in Zoho Flow that a form entry being added in this form is going to trigger the start of this automation process. And the next thing I want to do is actually create the lead in Zoho CRM. If you type in Zoho CRM on the left bar, it'll take a moment. This is for everyone. It's a bit laggy when it's loading in these apps, but it's going to pull up Zoho CRM for you. And if you open up that dropdown, you'll see a bunch of different actions you can take based on this form being submitted. In this case, we just want to create a lead, but I would highly recommend using the create or update option. So what that means is you don't want to be creating duplicates. I want to create this person if they don't already exist in my database, but if they already exist, I just want to update the existing record, or maybe I don't even want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and drag over create or update. And the builder in Zoho Flow, if you're not familiar with it, on the right-hand side, it'll allow you to choose data from the incoming source and tell it where you want it to go inside of Zoho. So it's loaded up all of the fields for the leads module in this particular CRM instance. And you can see that last name is mandatory, so I do need to bring that in. In this case, the form that I've built isn't super compatible with, so I would want to have a first name, last name field on my form. I don't. There's a few different ways I can handle this. I go into them a lot more in depth in a Zoho Flow video that we've done. But let's say I just wanted to use the full name in this instance, or I wanted to copy full name here. Either way. And then for the subject line, perhaps I want to add that as the note, like a description on this record. I could go down to the description box and add the subject line of their email. And then maybe underneath that, I want to tab down and then do the message. And for the lead source, perhaps I want the lead source to be a custom value. So I'll go ahead and use a custom value for lead source. And I want the custom value to be the name of the form or the ID of the form that they submitted, so that I know exactly which form they submitted. And then I can go ahead and hit done. It looks like I missed a mandatory field of company. Again, that's not a field on this form, so I'll just go ahead and use the subject line for the purposes of this video. And that is really all there is to it. I've connected inside of the backend of WordPress. I've connected this domain through Everest forms using the Zoho Flow plugin. And then inside Zoho Flow, I've just taken that Everest forms form submission and say, I want to create or update a lead. And that's it. In the top right corner, I can turn this flow on. And now it's active. Anytime I fill out a form on my website that is using this form, it will go ahead and trigger this automation. In order to show you a couple extra little nuanced details about this, I'm going to go ahead and actually submit this form. So I'm going to submit it as myself. And just so you know, my contact information does not exist in this particular CRM instance, so it will not exist and it will create a new one. We'll say this is a test for the subject line and this is my message. Look how easy this is. Go ahead and submit this. Boom, they get the success message that your web developer has put together for that particular form. And then inside Zoho Flow, what's going to happen is it's going to trigger the Zoho Flow. And under this history tab, which is kind of the nuance I wanted to show you, it'll actually show you all of your different submissions, when they happened, whether or not they successfully processed. And if I click on that particular one, I can see exactly what came in through the form builder. And then I can confirm that it actually created a lead and what the ID of that lead is if I need to do any auditing of this particular integration. So now if I was to hop back into the leads module for this account and just quickly refresh the list, you'll see that Jordan Poole has been created as a lead with the company of this is a test because I took the subject line in. And then under the description, you can see this is a test. This is my message. Look how easy this is. All that data instantly captured in. It came from the website form, which has an ID number of 40, which is just like an arbitrary thing I use for the lead source. And that's it. It's in the system. And now every single lead that comes from my website through these forms is just going to immediately populate into my leads and be available for my reps. The final option, and the most difficult to configure, but an option nonetheless if you're using a form builder that doesn't match one of the two profiles I mentioned before, which is either a direct integration or a Zoho Flow integration, is what's called a webhook. So in your particular form builder, if you go into WordPress and let's say you opened up Ninja Forms, or even better, I think WordPress Forms 7, if you're using that, has the option for webhooks. If under their apps and integrations, there's an option for webhooks, we'll go ahead and see if Ninja Forms contains something like that. Doesn't look like they do. So we in the case of Ninja Forms, this wouldn't be an option. But if I go to, let's say, WP Forms, and we'll go to their add-ons to see what they have available, you'll see that there is a webhooks add-on. Now, in this case, it's giving me an upgrade button, meaning I have to have a paid version of WordPress Form 7 to use this. But if I hit the upgrade now button, it'll take me to the details and I can upgrade. Once you've done that, effectively, all the webhook means is that when this form is submitted, where do you want us to send the form data? And you can just give it a URL. And that URL will receive the data, and then you can do things with it just like if it had a native connection to Zoho Flow. So if your form builder has the option to send a webhook, all you need to do is go back into Zoho Flow. And I'm actually going to go just straight to the home URL of flow.zoho.com. And we actually do have an example webhook here, but I'm going to show you a new one from scratch. So I'm going to create a flow and call this a webhook demo. When you're choosing what you want to trigger your automation, instead of choosing an application, we're going to choose to use a webhook. When you choose to configure that, it's actually going to immediately give you the URL that you can copy and paste over into the form builder of your choice, wherever you have that webhook add-on. You would paste that URL in and then hit the next button. The first thing it wants you to do is it wants you to test the webhook so it can see what the data looks like that you're going to send it. So you'll click the test button. And because you have saved this URL already on your form, you would then submit the form just as a user, just submit a test. And this little box will then immediately collect the data and show you what that data looks like. If it looks the way you expected, it has, your first name, last name, email, etc. You're good to go, and you can click this done button. Once you've done that, what you'll end up being able to do, just with the other example, is in the builder, after that webhook is triggered, you can then do things like fetch contacts from the database, create a lead, whatever it is you want to do in the CRM. And the way this ends up looking from the builder, if I go to this create lead, is under this incoming webhook, which would be the same as your form builder connection. You can see that it gives you all the fields that will be coming through that webhook based on the test that you sent. And you can, just like before, click on the name fields and input first name, last name, etc. Once you've gone ahead and set that up, it's exactly the same as what we just showed you before in the other Zoho Flow example. The only real difference here is how you're collecting the data. It's not a built-in integration with Zoho Flow. Instead, you need to use a webhook that's going to post some sort of data to a URL. And that's really all there is to it. So those are your main three options. Again, first step, check if your form builder has a direct integration under add-ons with Zoho CRM. If they do, great. Your life is going to be very, very easy. If they do not, install the Zoho Flow plugin inside of WordPress and check if your form builder is supported there. If it is, again, your life is pretty easy. You have an extra step that you do have to take by building out the Zoho Flow, but it doesn't take very long to configure. And there is some added advantages to having it in Zoho Flow, such as being able to actually see the history. So if someone filled out your form and something went wrong, you'll be able to tell why and still have their data because that form submission will be saved right here. And then you can also rerun the flow if you just need to fix something small, such as a field being mandatory in your CRM that maybe shouldn't have been mandatory. And then finally, if all else fails, if it can send a webhook post, then you can go ahead and build a Zoho Flow using the webhook, which again has its advantages as well. A lot of power here. Highly recommend taking a look at the Zoho Flow route just because there are some additional things you can do, such as making decisions based on data they fill out. Maybe if they click yes on one of your select drop-down options, you want it to create a lead, but if they selected no, you want it to just drop them into your campaign system or whatever it may be. So a lot of cool things you can do here. Recommend checking it out. If the answer to all three of these things is no, my form builder that I'm using on my WordPress site does not have an integration. It does not work with Zoho Flow, and it does not have a feature to post a webhook, then unfortunately you are in a position where you're likely going to need to replace those forms with something else. You could just replace them with one of the great form builders I've shown here, such as Gravity Forms, Ninja Forms, WordPress Forms, something like that. Or you can go the Zoho Forms route. If you choose to go the Zoho Forms route, which for me personally is not my recommended route, you would go into Zoho Forms, create a form such as this contact form here. And because it's a Zoho app and Zoho does a great job at integrating most of its apps, you'll be able to go under the integrations tab and you'll have a direct integration available with Zoho CRM so that you can feed it directly into leads, and it's very easy to set up. The reason I don't typically recommend using Zoho Forms on your website, if it's a really well built out and branded website, is that there is a limit to how easy it is to make it visually look appealing without knowing CSS and doing custom web work. And a lot of times you're going to get better results from the web builders that are made for WordPress, like Gravity Forms, when it comes to putting together a really quick but visually stunning form that matches the styling of your website. So that's really the only reason I recommend using your already existing WordPress form builders if you can do it, because they're already on your website. They already look great. They're already functionally working for you. You just want to add one extra feature. It doesn't make sense to replace them just for that purpose. If you end up going the Zoho Forms route, once you've built out the form and set it to integrate with the CRM, all you need to do is click the share button. And there's a few different share options. Under here, you have embed, and you have a bunch of different embed options. You can embed it as an iframe, which isn't an amazing option. Your web developer, or if you are the web developer, you'll understand why iframe isn't the ideal option. You can also embed the iframe via JavaScript. You can put it in a lightbox. You can use a website builder. Sometimes you can just embed it directly in WordPress using the Zoho Forms integration plugin. And also you have the HTML CSS option where you can actually download the HTML CSS code from the form. And then you have a lot more style control, and you can have it not be embedded in an iframe window. This is the best if you were comfortable with it. iframe would be like the easiest if you just wanted something simple to copy and paste into your WordPress website. So that's all there really is to it. Those are your options when it comes to linking in form data from WordPress into Zoho. There are a few other more niche options that I wouldn't bother going down those routes if you can avoid it. But if you're not using WordPress and you do need to know about other options that aren't using WordPress form builders, please feel free to drop a comment and I'd be happy to give you some advice on how you can integrate other non-WordPress type forms that don't allow a webhook option. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you find it helpful. Don't forget to like, comment, and click that notification bell to get notified whenever we drop new videos. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave those in the comment section below or head on over to club.zenatta.com and drop your feedback there. We love to hear back from the community. And so if you have any questions at all, we'd be happy to hop in and give you some feedback there as well. Again, thank you for joining me. I'll catch you in the next video.